What happens when one of wrestling's most respected figures walks into what should be a routine late-night interview, only to discover the host has prepared an ambush designed to humiliate him on national television? Tonight, we're diving deep into the explosive confrontation that left audiences stunned and John Cena walking off set in disgust. This isn't your typical celebrity spat, it's about respect, integrity, and what happens when a talk show host's ego spirals completely out of control. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below because this story gets more intense with every passing minute. The green room backstage at Jimmy Kimmel Live was unusually quiet that Tuesday evening. John Cena sat reviewing his mental notes, preparing for what his publicist had assured him would be a light-hearted conversation about his latest movie and his charitable work with the Make-A-Wish Foundation. He had done hundreds of these interviews over the years, from wrestling promotions to Hollywood red carpets, and tonight felt like it would be another routine appearance to promote his upcoming action film. "Mr. Cena, we're ready for you in 5 minutes," announced a production assistant, clipboard in hand, with a headset buzzing with chatter from the control room. Cena nodded, straightening his navy blue suit jacket. He had specifically chosen a conservative, professional look tonight, wanting to present himself as the serious actor he had worked so hard to become. Gone were the flashy wrestling trunks and over-the-top personas. This was John Cena, the philanthropist, the actor, the man who had granted more wishes for terminally ill children than any other celebrity in history. Meanwhile, in his dressing room across the hall, Jimmy Kimmel was having a very different kind of preparation session. His head writer, Marcus, stood nearby with a tablet full of notes and a concerned expression on his face. "Jimmy, I really think we should reconsider this approach," Marcus said, scrolling through the prepared questions. "These questions are pretty aggressive, especially the stuff about his wrestling background and the personal attacks." Cena's camp had specifically requested they focus on the movie and his charity work. Kimmel turned away from his mirror, where he had been adjusting his tie with almost manic precision. His eyes had a strange gleam that Marcus had learned to recognize over their years of working together. It was the look Jimmy got when he felt like a guest was getting too much positive press, when he decided someone needed to be taken down a peg. "Marcus, that's exactly the problem," Kimmel said, his voice carrying an edge that hadn't been there during their afternoon meeting. "Everyone treats this guy like he walks on water, Mr. Perfect, Mr. Make-A-Wish, Mr. Hollywood. Someone needs to ask the real questions, and it might as well be me." Marcus shook his head. "But these questions aren't journalism, Jimmy. They're character assassination. You're asking him about steroid use from 15 years ago, about whether his charity work is just for publicity, about his personal relationships. This isn't what we agreed on." Kimmel's expression hardened. He had been riding high on a wave of viral clips lately, moments where he had made guests visibly uncomfortable, and the internet had eaten it up. The more controversial the moment, the more views it generated, and the more his bosses smiled at the advertising revenue. Somewhere along the way, creating viral moments had become more important than having actual conversations. "Look, Marcus, I've been doing this show for 20 years. I know what makes good television, and it's not another puff piece about how wonderful John Cena is. The audience wants to see something real, something raw. They want to see these celebrities when their PR masks slip off. This isn't about showing something real, Jimmy," Marcus shot back. "This is about ambushing a guy who came here in good faith. His people specifically said he's been dealing with some personal stuff lately and wanted to keep things positive." Kimmel waved dismissively. "Personal stuff? Everyone's got personal stuff. That doesn't mean he gets a free pass from honest questions." Marcus closed his tablet with a snap. "These aren't honest questions, Jimmy. Half of these are based on internet rumors and gossip. The steroid thing has been debunked for years. The charity stuff, you're literally asking him if he only helps sick kids for publicity. How is that honest?" "Sometimes you have to push people to get to the truth," Kimmel replied. But his voice lacked conviction. Deep down, he knew Marcus was right. but his ego had taken control. Now he had convinced himself that this was about journalistic integrity when really it was about proving he could rattle someone who seemed unshakable. The production assistant knocked on Kimmel's door. "Mr. Kimmel, we're starting in 2 minutes." Mr. Cena is already walking to his position. "Perfect timing," Kimmel said, grabbing his question cards as he walked toward the stage. Marcus called after him one last time. "Jimmy, I'm telling you, this is going to backfire." Cena isn't some reality TV star looking for attention. He's a respected guy who's earned his reputation the hard way. You attack him like this, and you're going to look like the villain. But Kimmel was already walking away, his mind made up. He had decided that tonight was going to be the night he proved that nobody, not even John Cena, was above being challenged on his show. Out on the stage, the audience was buzzing with excitement. Jimmy Kimmel Live had a reputation for surprise moments, and many of the fans in attendance were hoping they might witness something memorable. They had no idea just how memorable this evening was about to become. John Cena walked out to thunderous applause, waving to the crowd with his characteristic humble smile. He had always been gracious with fans, whether they were wrestling enthusiasts or moviegoers, and tonight felt no different. He shook hands with Jimmy, exchanged what appeared to be friendly pleasantries, and settled into the guest chair with the relaxed confidence of someone who had done this dance countless times before. "So John, great to have you back on the show," Jimmy began, his tone seemingly warm and welcoming. "You look fantastic, very professional tonight. Really trying to shed that wrestling image, aren't you?" Cena chuckled, thinking this was just typical late-night banter. "Well, Jimmy, I've never tried to shed anything. Wrestling made me who I am, and I'm proud of that. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about the new movie and some of the charity work we've been doing." "The charity work," Jimmy said, and something in his tone made Cena's internal alarm bells start ringing. "We'll definitely get to that, but first, I have to ask, and I think our audience deserves to know how much of your success in wrestling was natural talent versus, shall we say, chemical enhancement?" The audience fell silent. This wasn't the playful ribbing they expected from a Kimmel interview. This was a direct accusation delivered with a smile, but carrying the weight of a sledgehammer. Cena's expression shifted subtly. The relaxed confidence was still there, but now it was tempered with confusion and a growing awareness that this interview was not going to go as planned. "I'm sorry, Jimmy, but I'm not sure what you're implying. I've been tested more times than I can count throughout my wrestling career, and I've always been clean." "That's a matter of public record." "Public record?" Jimmy pressed, consulting his cards with theatrical precision. "Sure, but we both know how easy it is to work around those systems." "Come on, John, you went from a relatively small guy to one of the most physically imposing wrestlers in the business almost overnight. That doesn't happen naturally." The audience was getting uncomfortable now. This wasn't the fun, light-hearted Jimmy Kimmel they were used to. This felt more like a hostile interrogation than an entertainment show. Cena leaned forward slightly, his voice remaining calm but gaining an edge. "Jimmy, I'm going to stop you right there. I've spent 20 years building my reputation on hard work, dedication, and integrity. I've never taken performance-enhancing drugs, and I find it pretty disappointing that you'd come at me with these kinds of accusations on national television without any evidence whatsoever." "Evidence?" Jimmy repeated, as if the word amused him. "Well, let's talk about evidence then. What evidence do we have that all this charity work you do, all these Make-A-Wish visits, or what evidence do we have that it's anything more than a carefully crafted PR campaign?" That was the moment everything changed. Cena's expression hardened completely, and for the first time since sitting down, Jimmy Kimmel realized he might have made a serious miscalculation. The silence in the studio was deafening. Even the camera operators seemed to sense that something had gone terribly wrong. John Cena sat perfectly still for what felt like an eternity, his jaw clenched, and his eyes locked on Jimmy's face with an intensity that made the host shift uncomfortably in his chair. "Excuse me," Cena said finally, his voice quiet but carrying a dangerous edge. Did you just suggest that my work with terminally ill children is a publicity stunt? Jimmy tried to maintain his composure, but beads of sweat were forming on his forehead. The audience was dead silent now, and he could feel the energy in the room turning against him. Still, his ego wouldn't let him back down. I'm just asking the questions that people are thinking, John. You have to admit, the timing of these charity appearances always seems to coincide with your movie releases or big wrestling events. It's a fair question. A fair question, Cena repeated slowly, as if testing the words. Jimmy, I've spent over 15 years of my life visiting children who are fighting for their lives. I've held the hands of kids who didn't make it to their next birthday. I've been to more funerals than I care to count. And you think that's a publicity stunt? The camera caught Jimmy swallowing hard. He was beginning to realize that he had stepped into territory he couldn't navigate his way out of, but his pride wouldn't let him retreat. Look, I'm not trying to attack your character, John. I'm just saying that in Hollywood, everything is calculated. Every move is strategic. You can't tell me that your people don't coordinate these visits with your publicity schedule. My people? Cena said, his voice getting quieter, which somehow made it more menacing. Jimmy, when a 7-year-old girl named Sarah in Ohio asked to meet me 3 weeks ago, and I drove 6 hours to spend 4 hours with her family, who exactly do you think calculated that?